जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदनन्दन व्रजजनरञ्जन यशोदनन्दन व्रजजनरञ्जन श्रीरावणचारी राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा गिरिधारी राधा गिरिधारी राधा जय राधा गिरिधारी राधा गिरिधारी राधा जय जगन्नाथ जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेव जय सुभाष जय जगन्नाथ जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेव जय सुभाष जय गौरनिताय 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 प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव सप्री ब्रजकचार्य सूत्र शतश्री ऐसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय नामचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा गिरिधारी भगवान की जय श्री श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा मैया की जय श्री श्री गौर निताय की जय निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Srila Gurudev. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्ठिकी। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। Hare Krishna and welcome everybody to this morning Srimad Bhagavatam session where we'll be looking at this verse from Canto 3, Chapter 29, verse 43. Nabho dadati swasataam padam yan niyamad adaha lokam swadeham tanute mahan saptabhir avritam नभो ददाति स्वसतां पदं यन्नियमाददः लोकं स्वदेहं तनुते महान् सप्तभिरावृतम् नभो ददाति स्वसतां पदं यन्नियमाददः लोकं स्वदेहं तनुते महान् सप्तभिरावृतम् Nabhaha, the sky. Dadati, gives. Swasatam, to the living entities. Padam, abode. Yat, of whom, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Niyamat, under the control. Adaha, that. Lokam, the universe. Swadeham, own body. Tanute, expands. Mahan, the Mahat Tattva. Saptabhihi, with the 7 layers. Avritam, covered. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Subject to the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sky allows outer space to accommodate all the various planets which hold innumerable living entities. The total universal body expands with its 7 coverings under his supreme control. Purport. It is understood from this verse that all the planets in outer space are floating and they hold all living entities. The word swasatam means those who breathe or the living entities. In order to accommodate them, there are innumerable planets. Every planet is a residence for innumerable living entities, and the necessary space is provided in the sky by the supreme order of the Lord. It is also stated here that the total universal body is increasing. It is covered by 7 layers. And as there are 5 elements within the universe, so the total elements in layers cover the outside of the universal body. The first layer is of earth, and it is 10 times greater in size than the space within the universe. The second layer is water, and that is 10 times greater than the earthly layer. The third covering is fire, which is 10 times greater than the water covering. In this way, each layer is 10 times greater than the previous one. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Mahavishnu Goswami Niti Namine Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this Canto 3, Chapter 29, essentially talks about explanation of devotional service. That this is a description or a conversation between Mother Devahuti and her son Kapil Dev, who is none other than the Supreme Lord, a plenary portion of the Supreme Lord himself. So he has already discussed the importance of devotional service, and now he is explaining that in detail. So this chapter started with the aspects of devotional service, how they are combined with the different modes initially until one strives to achieve pure devotional service. And then the descriptions are about the Supreme Lord and the way he is actually creating, maintaining, and annihilating this universe. So, this particular section essentially talks about how he creates and maintains through his different agencies. So, in this verse, it is said, it talks about three specific elements. One is the sky, which is part of the five elements that we know, the gross elements. So it talks about the sky, which is Nabho Dadati Swasatam. So the sky has got a function. So everything that Krishna creates has got a function. It is not just some haphazard, unplanned thing that comes about. Because Krishna creates everything for a purpose, and he also takes it away for a purpose. So anything that the Supreme Lord does is for a purpose. The problem is we don't realize that purpose. We don't see that purpose. We don't try to understand that purpose. Of course, as ordinary living entities, it is very difficult for us to understand the totality of why the Lord does certain things. But if we try and understand his mind, or what he thinks while he creates, and how he orchestrates all these different occurrences in this material world, then we can develop some kind of connection and understanding and a deep gratitude, a sense of gratitude to what he is doing for us. Irrespective of our reciprocation, Krishna is doing all of this. And essentially, why is he doing that? Because we had this desire to enjoy. And for our enjoyment, he's created this whole material world. He had to expand as Vishnu, three Vishnus in fact, and he had to then further expand and take incarnations and come and entice us and attract us to start having the desire to know about him. So here it is said that Nabho Dadati Swasatam. Prabhupada in the purport writes, Swasatam means all people who breathe. Obviously, all the living entities, not matter, but all the living entities. So this sky gives the living entities what? Padam yan niyamad adaha. So under the control of the Supreme Lord, the sky is giving shelter or giving residence to the living entities, the people who breathe, entities who breathe. And how is he doing that? Prabhupada explains that obviously the sky is a big space. It's very difficult to comprehend the start and the end of the sky. It is just a huge mass of space from our perspective. And in this space, there are innumerable planets. Obviously, in science, we understand that there are these 9 planetary systems, and we are part of a galaxy. There are many galaxies like this, which astronomers or science is still trying to find out. But from Srimad Bhagavatam, we understand that there are 14 planetary systems, and the planets that science has discovered is only in the middle planetary system area, Earth and the other so-called comprehensible planets. But there is no idea that science has, or has so far anyway, in terms of the planets that exist beyond. Science understands that there is something beyond, but they don't have any idea. So Bhagavatam clearly says that there are 14 planetary systems. And those of you who have seen that chart, the material world and the spiritual world chart, would understand that how this universe is like this big egg, golden egg, and how Krishna expands himself as Vishnu, and rather first Karanodakshai Vishnu, and then Garbhodakshai Vishnu. Then as Garbhodakshai Vishnu, he enters into each universe, and from each universe, from his navel, Brahma appears, and Brahma is given the secondary task of creation of those planetary systems and the living entities. So there are 14 planetary systems, one on top of each other, starting from Satyalok at the top, Bhulok in the middle, and Patal at the end. And all these planets are moving, and they are there in their own location, in their own orbit. Now, who actually has kept them in the sky? Because it's not like a thread that we see, like a pearl on a thread, that there's a thread and there's pearls behind that we can comprehend. So planets are not like there is this thread that is going. They are randomly floating. Of course, there is a system behind the randomness, but they are floating in the sky. And from science, we have no answers in terms of how it is floating. It is floating somehow, but there is no indication, or there is no specific answer. The science is very difficult for science to find out. So here it is said that under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So controller is the Supreme Person. Under the control, what happens? The sky allows the outer space to accommodate all the planets. Under the instruction of the Supreme Lord, the sky is able to locate these planets in their own positions and keep them in their own orbit. And in each of these planets, now there is this big thing about Mars mission Mars. People are trying to send unmanned mission, and now there are soon manned missions planned in various time frames. And I don't know if I've shared this in this forum, but in other forums I have, where it is absolutely, unbelievable that so-called intelligent, wealthy people of this world, including different parts of the world, they have actually been enticed to buy a piece of land on Mars. It is absolutely, we just don't know what's the logic. But they've got a lot of money, but they've used their intelligence by whoever has put forward this argument or this proposal, and they've actually spent a lot of money buying a piece of land in Mars on a place that they've never ever visited, but they have dreams that one day they will. And they have spent a lot of their fortune in just buying that. Unimaginable. So people are just with the Mars because there is a perception that Mars is very close to Earth. So it is perhaps a natural transition for people on the surface of the Earth to take residence in Mars. Like people move on from smaller cities to bigger cities and migrate, and then move to different bigger developing countries or developed countries. Like that, now as Earth is getting saturated, people are now looking at other planets, and Mars seems to be the pick of the hour at the moment. But little do they realize that you cannot just go to Mars just like that. And in Mars, there might not be living entities like us, but there are living entities. The sun also has living entities, the moon also has living entities, but the sun does not have living entities like us with this 5-element body. They're also living entities, but their body is like fire. So we cannot perceive those living entities with our ordinary senses. But Bhagavatam describes that all planets are inhabited. There are living entities there. So the sky is actually maintaining not only the planets, but ensuring that the living entities are also being maintained. And all is happening under the will of the Supreme Lord. Further, there is a description which says that Lokam Swadeham Tanute. Lokam is this universe, this universal body of the Lord that he creates. So what happens to that? Mahan Saptabhir Avritam. Avritam means it's covered. So this universal body, this whole creation is covered. How? Saptabhir, by 7 layers. So that's why this we call that in this material world we are in bondage. Of course, bondage in different layers. We are in bondage under the 3 modes, which has led us to be here in this first place. Once we are here, we are bound, just like jail. But why is it like jail? It is like jail because this whole universal is covered by 7 layers. There is a nice description of these 7 layers further on in Canto 6. Those of you who would like to have a read Canto 6, Chapter 16, text 37. It describes in detail. Prabhupada has just talked about 3 layers here. Obviously, he knew that he's going to describe that a bit more further on. But there are 7 layers. So the first layer, as Prabhupada describes here, is the layer of earth. And whatever is the space that is in the universe, this layer of earth is 10 times that space. I mean, we can't even comprehend. It's just, we don't even know how big the space is. So how can we imagine what is 10 times that space? Isn't it? Isn't it amazing? But the earth, the element earth rather, not the planet earth, but the element earth is 10 times. Then the next layer after earth is the layer of water. Bhumir Apa Anala Vayu. So Bhumi is first, second is water, and the water layer is 10 times more than the layer of earth. So as the coverings keep going from inside to outside, it keeps increasing 10 times. Then the next layer is fire layer, it's a layer of fire. And that is 10 times the layer of water. Then there is a layer of air or wind. So this layer of air is 10 times greater than fire. And then you have got the 5th layer, which is the sky. So the sky is 10 times the wind layer. And then the 6th layer is called the total energy. The total energies. And the 7th layer is the ahankar, false ego, which is 10 times the 6th layer, which is like if you go back, imagine the amount of zeros will be there in the 7th layer. So with such a tight covering, which consists of these elements, how can a living entity, a soul, on its own penetrate these layers and go back to the spiritual world? Impossible. So that is why a living entity who is in this material world inside these 7 coverings is called a Baddha Jeev, or conditioned, or a prisoner in this prison house. And the only way to get out of this prison house is to petition to the creator of this prison house, who can come and open these layers, these coverings. These coverings, we can kind of imagine them to be like 7 gates, like a palace or a prison has got these different levels of security. As you go from the outside gate to the inside to see some of the inmates inside, there are different layers. So similarly, there are these different layers which are different gates. So when we are following the instructions and petitioning the Lord, He actually opens up those gates, those layers for us, and then we are able to go through. But He gives us a taste of how this layer can be opened, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. So this material nature, all these elements, all the Bhumi, Apa, Anala, Vayu, they all have a function. They are all independently, they are all independent of each other, but they're working in complete dependence and under the instructions of the Supreme Lord through his different agencies. And each of them have got a presiding deity to control the day-to-day affairs. It's like Krishna is obviously the leader. He gives instructions, he envisions things and says what he needs, what he wants that should happen. But he's got these different presiding deities who are his actual managers, who manage the day-to-day activities of this whole creation, which is like a company, like a factory. So everything is happening under the instructions of the Lord. And interestingly, text 40 and 41, just before 43, talks about the fact that the earth, the fire, the earth does not, it is said that the earth is floating. Right? And we understand that in this universe, each universe, half of the universe is filled with the perspiration of the Lord. Right? And Garbhodaksha Vishnu sits on Anantashesh on that ocean, and then from his navel, the Brahma and all the planetary systems they come. So the planets are in the top half of this egg, and bottom half is just ocean. So how is it that these planets are not, they're just floating and somehow or the other they don't sink in the ocean? It's interesting, isn't it? They can sink. We see even in things around us, this big masses of ocean, and there are so many ships that are plying. But with just one technical fault or a problem or an error, a ship can sink very easily. We all obviously know the example of Titanic. But in Krishna's creation, there is no scope for error or mistake. Everything happens perfectly well and is orchestrated by the Lord. So the earth does not sink in the ocean. Similarly, the fire definitely has to burn. It cannot say, oh, today I'm not going to burn, I'm going to behave like water. Sometimes we have mood changes, mood swings. So what our nature actually is, we act right opposite to our nature sometimes, or we like to act. But the nature of the inherent nature or the dharma of that particular element, that element cannot give away, even if it wants to. So the fire's nature is to burn, and it burns. Similarly, the ocean, we see different tides, big tides coming in and tsunamis sometimes and this, that. But apart from tsunamis, of course, on a normal day-to-day basis, the ocean also knows its parameters. This is how much I'm going to go when there's high tide, and this is how I must recede when it's a low tide. So the ocean knows its boundaries and it functions within the boundaries. Similarly, the wind, the sun, the rain, trees giving fruits and flowers, rivers flowing, all of these elements as part of material nature are functioning. And text 40 and 41 says they are functioning. Why? Out of fear. Bhai. So they fear the authority of the Supreme Lord, and they want to follow his instructions and do their activities that they're supposed to do, the nature of those activities. So all these elements in material nature, they are functioning out of fear of the Supreme Lord. Similarly, in this verse, the sky is holding these planets, which has innumerable living entities, because the sky is also in fear of the Supreme Lord. So why do we need to know all these things? In fact, even Bhagavad Gita also, there is a very nice verse in 15:13, chapter 15, text 13. Gamavishya cha bhutani dharayaya hamojasa pushnami chaushadi sarva soma bhutva rasatmakaha. So there, Krishna says that by my energy, ojas, my ojas is energy of the Lord. So aham ojasa. So why by his energy, by his ojas, what does he do? Dharayaham. So he actually sustains. He literally holds. Dharan karna. He is holding the what? Not living entities, universes. Gam. Gam is about these different planets. Avishyacha Bhutani, which has got different living entities. So the information in Bhagavatam is obviously an explanation of an information that Krishna gives Arjun in chapter 15. And also just before chapter 15, in chapter 14, in text 18, Krishna also talks about the different planetary systems and based on the modes, how a living entity is located in those planetary systems. For example, a person who is situated in the mode of goodness, he goes to the higher planetary systems, which is higher than Earth. Earth is considered middle. Those in the mode of passion, they are located in the Earth planet. And those who are in the mode of ignorance, they go to the hellish planets. Udvam gachanti sattvastha. And so these are important for us to know that these planets have been created based on the modes, based on the desires which are conditioned by the modes. So to accommodate all our desires, Krishna has done so much. So why do we need to know? We need to know that because of our desires, Krishna had to work so hard for us. Can you imagine? And we always complain that Krishna is not doing this, he's not doing this, he's not doing this, he's not taking care of me, giving me so much trouble, giving me so much miseries, putting us through lockdown, and all those kind of questions they come to us. But the reality is, Krishna is doing all of this for us to fulfill our desires. But the thing is, we have to understand how much pain he is taking for us. It's like the small child, When the child is small, the parents sacrifice so much. They give the child so much of their time, their energy, resources. But at that age, the child does not really appreciate the role of the parents. And sometimes gets into argument, rebels, does something completely opposite of what the parents tell them or expect them to do. Sounds familiar? Yeah, that's what happens. So, parents, just because the children are not appreciative, do not just stop doing it. They keep doing it and they do it to the best of their ability. When the child grows up, assumes more responsibility, becomes a parent, that is the time the child realizes that, oh my God, the child remembers. I mean, the child knows what the parents have done, but they don't appreciate. But when they see their situation and they relate back to what their parents did for them, then they appreciate those sacrifices, the things the parents have done, and then they have this sense of gratitude. Sometimes it becomes a bit too late because the parents might have left their body by then. That's a different discussion. But the point is that we have to know so the child, once the child knows, knowing is one thing, but once the child realizes that, oh my God, my parents have taken so much effort for me, the child becomes grateful, expresses gratitude, and connects deeply with the parents. Isn't it? So, similarly, when we understand how much trouble Krishna is taking for us just to fulfill our desires, first we need to know. And when we know and we see in our own life how we also have to take so much pains and sacrifice to take care and maintain our dependence, then we can relate to it. Then we can understand the magnanimity of Krishna's work. So there is a nice verse in Bhagavad Gita again that talks about just before Chaturshloki, chapter 10, text 7. So Krishna says here, Etam vibhutim yogam cha mama yo vetti tatvatah svavikalpena yogena yujyate natra samshayah. So Krishna says that one who is actually convinced of what? Of all my opulence, all that the qualities that I have and all the activities that I do, they establish my opulence. So one who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mine, what does he do? He engages himself in devotional service. Of this, there is no doubt. So the whole point of understanding all of this information Krishna is giving us through Bhagavad Gita, through Srimad Bhagavatam, is to develop a deep connection with the Lord, starting from a sense of gratitude, which obviously takes a natural transition into selfless service. So, our whole existence, our whole understanding comes from this process of hearing, as we are aware. So, right now, we are hearing from Srila Prabhupada, from his purports, from other scriptures that he has given us. So, we hear. So, by hearing, we are actually reviving our original relationship that we have with Krishna. So we constantly, the thing is, because we are in this conditioned existence, we forget, especially in Kali Yuga. It is a common problem. It's a common disease that we forget. We are very lazy. We are short-lived, and we forget. So even though we might read once, because we are in this material existence, amidst all these conditional activities that we do, we forget. We forget the greatness of Krishna. We forget what Krishna is doing for us. So we have to constantly revive. So the consciousness is there, the understanding is there internally, but it has got covered. So by hearing on a regular basis, that covering becomes, the covering actually gives off, and that original divine consciousness that connects us to the Supreme is revived. So the process of hearing is the starting point. So we have to understand that to hear about Krishna is not an ordinary activity, because Krishna is not an ordinary person. And in this conditioned existence, in this material world, if we do not hear of something that is out of the ordinary, it doesn't catch our attention. True or not? Like if you look at the news today, what is it that catches our attention? If the news is something far out, something completely unexpected, it catches our attention. If somebody is just murdered, yeah, it does catch our attention. But if somebody is brutally murdered and has gone through so much pain before he was murdered, it becomes a point of attracting people's attention, and people actually read, although that person might not even be remotely connected to us. I'm not even talking about personalities or movie stars or something like that. Just an ordinary person, we read in the newspaper and we start reading. We start eating that news, because we are so engrossed. Now, Krishna realizes that propensity that we have. So, to address that propensity, to attract our attention from these gross, unnecessary, nonsensical occurrings, not that we should not know about them, but they have no meaning in our life. Of course, we can take lessons from them and ensure we improve ourselves, but that's it. There is no point to, chew them again and again and discuss in length at length or in detail with other people. So Krishna, he performs these activities, these pastimes, to attract our attention. And once he attracts our attention, we hear attentively. So we have to understand that it is very difficult for us in this conditioned existence to remember Krishna, to connect with Krishna, is it not? When we speak about Krishna to others, when we invite them to the temple, we often find that people are having different reasons and excuses to not come. Even if they are convinced that yes, they should, somehow they are not able to. So Prabhupada has facilitated that process whereby he creates so many avenues for devotees to not only come together but give others who are not yet practicing devotees to start interacting with devotees. And so he has created temples, he has created festivals, he has created namhats, he has created so many programs that happen throughout the year, even outside of the temple. He has created Rath Yatra. Why is it? It is only to give an opportunity to other living entities to somehow or the other hear. What do we do when we go for Harinam? We are chanting, and when we are chanting, others are hearing. So the whole process of connecting back to the Supreme starts from hearing. And hearing actually establishes our lost connection. It's like we have not got the Wi-Fi connection with Krishna. The Golok connection, we have to connect with him. But to connect with him, it is not a hardware or just some waves that we see in this material world. There are different types of spiritual waves that we have to connect to. And that can be summed up into an acronym. If you want to note that down, it might be of interest to you. There's a nice acronym. CAR, like car. C A, there is another A. CAAR, car. So we need to have this car, all of us need to have this car to be able to completely connect ourselves and remember Krishna all the time. So what is this car? So the C is what? Connection. Connection to the Supreme Lord. So when we hear, because purification starts in our heart, we are able to connect to him. So it's like the first contact. Like you meet a person for the first time. So when we hear about Krishna, oh, okay, that's nice. When we hear these pastimes, then we might not accept them fully, but it attracts our attention. It's like those ads, you have in this media, now it comes up all over YouTube and other things where this is big byline, and it attracts your attention. It might not be of any interest to you as a product or service or whatever is being offered, but it attracts your attention, and that is the primary purpose. So when we hear, it attracts our attention. So that's how we first connect with Krishna. After we connect with Krishna, because we are connecting and hearing on a regular basis, that is, what happens? A is, because we are hearing and we are interested, we become attentive. Hearing is something else. Attentive hearing is something else. After hearing, it naturally moves on to attentive hearing. So that is a CA, attention, attentive. Whatever we do with full attention, with full focus. Because we are doing something with full focus, what happens? When we do it, we get some bliss. Susukham kartum avyayam. In chapter 9, Krishna says that when you engage, when you are attentive, when you are engaging in hearing, you feel some bliss. Because you feel some bliss, you become attracted to it. So first, somebody is just making you hear, and you hear attentively. Because you have heard attentively, the third point is A, which is you become attracted. Once we become attracted, then we do not need external stimulus to make us do it. We naturally do it. The practicing devotees who've been doing it for a while, who've been practicing devotional service, it has become a part of their life. Why? Because they're attracted to devotional service, to the Supreme Lord. So CAA, connection, attentiveness, and attraction. And then the last one is R. R is remembering Krishna. So when we are connected, we are attentive, we are attached, naturally we will remember all the time. Whatever we see in relation to Krishna, because we're attracted to him. Whatever we do, we know that ultimately it's all connected to Krishna in some form or the other. So it helps us remember Krishna. And remembering Krishna is ultimately our destination. In Bhagavad Gita, there's a nice verse in chapter 8, text 14, which says, Ananya chetaha satatam yomam smarati nityashaha tasyaham sulabha partha nitta yuktasya yoginaha. So Krishna says that Ananya chetaha satatam, Ananya chetaha, with one pointed determination, satatam, always. Yomam smarati nityashaha. Smarati means one who remembers me. Nityashaha, always. So with one pointed attention, if somebody is remembering me always, tasyaham sulabha partha nitya yuktasya yoginaha. So such a person is able to remember me. Why? Because of his constant engagement in devotional service. So by engaging in devotional service, we are connecting first to the Lord. We do activities in devotional service with full attention. Because we are able to do activities with full attention, obviously we need the association of devotees to develop that focus, that determination in doing devotional service. Once we start doing that, we become attracted. Once we become attracted, then it is a natural byproduct that remembrance automatically comes. And when we are remembering Krishna all the time, guess what? The connection becomes even strong. And when the connection is even strong, there is more attention, there is more attraction, there is more remembrance. And that's how this whole cycle keeps going. So it is not that when we start remembering Krishna, it's the end. It's a beginning of a circle. So first of all, this it's like, when the car starts moving, the wheel turns very slowly first time. Like, slowly, we are in first gear. And then as the car starts moving, we are in fourth gear and the wheel starts going fast, 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 fast. So similarly, the first time we connect with Krishna, it's a bit slow. The attraction to Krishna is a bit slow. The attention that we give is slow. Remembrance also is very little. But as we keep doing it, it becomes constant. Satatam, satatam. And that is what keeps us always connected to Krishna. And when we are connected to Krishna, by knowing all these pastimes, by understanding what he does for us, then automatically we place ourselves in Krishna's superior energy. There's a difference between Krishna's inferior energy and superior energy. As we just discussed some time back, all these elements of material nature, wind, earth, fire, trees, they are all functioning out of fear. Out of fear. So when we choose not to take a decision and be in the default mode, we are part of Krishna's inferior energy. So we function also like the other material elements out of fear. So if we are experiencing fear, that means we are aligning ourselves with Krishna's inferior energy, which works primarily on fear. But Krishna's superior energy, where all the pure souls are located, who are always doing selfless service to the Supreme Lord without any motivation, they function how? Out of bliss. Out of bliss. So we want to take ourselves from the lower modes and place ourselves in Krishna's, connect ourselves to Krishna's superior energy so we can experience that bliss. We don't do it just for the bliss, we do it to please Krishna, but the experience of bliss is a byproduct. So it is upon us to decide which way we want to go. To know more about Krishna, to read Bhagavatam on a regular basis, purify ourselves and place ourselves with Krishna's superior energy and do CAAR. Connect, be attentive, be attracted, and constantly remember Krishna and go on the fourth gear, and then we are always located in deep connection with Krishna, even though we may be in this material world, completely ready to serve Krishna at any possible opportunity given to us. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much. If there are any comments or questions, I can take them. Three of you saying Hare Krishna, but any other questions, I'm happy to take. Okay, looks like it's all good. Preparing for a Sunday morning. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.